Here. John Ullman.
Here.
Paul Pilcher.
Here.
Anthony Scalise. Fred Schilp. Charlotte Strebel. Here. Julia Taylor.
Here.
Mr. Speaker, we have a quorum with 84.18% of the delegates present.
Okay, thank you. Now I will need a motion to approve the calendar of business. I'll amend the calendar. Mary Lou Pettit will not be here today. She's still having some minor health problems, so we'll schedule her for whenever she's available. With that, do I have a motion to approve the calendar? Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Need approval of the Journal of October 1st, 2010.
Mr. Speaker, move to approve the Journal of October 1st, 2010 as submitted.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussions, additions or corrections? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, now we come to communications from the Board of Regional Commissioners. I see the commissioners are here. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you. And it's good to see everyone again. Not that we don't see you often. I don't have much of a report because we do have some items on your agenda today, particularly the job description and the process for hiring a replacement for Diane as the Assembly's clerk. We also have an ordinance that we're going to submit to you, and I will bring that to your attention momentarily. As far as the commissioners go, we've been involved mostly in the last couple of weeks in completing the performance evaluations of the county administrator and the executive director of the Cape Cod Commission, Mark Zielinski and Paul Niedzwiecki. So that's taken up a lot of our time. And but we also did agree today to final scope of services for to assess the current county services. We've talked about this for a while. We have some funding in the budget, and the funding is obviously, the cost is going to be less, we know, than $24,900, which is the jumping off point for going to a bid. So it doesn't have to be bid. It only requires an RFQ, a request for quotes. So, but we've been talking about doing an assessment of the services that the county performs. You know, what are they? Well, we know what they are, but in more detail. How are they organized? How much do they cost? What is their reach, both internal and external, in terms of the county within itself and citizens in Barnstable County? And we want to look at the organizational structure of the county. We want to look at the services also in terms of how long the county's been providing them, less than 5 years, more than 5 years. What is their cost? What is their value? What is their value to people who live in Barnstable County? And then what is the organizational structure of the county? Is it functional in terms of the services? And we're going to we're going to have the consultant meet with department heads to determine does a department head wish to retain that service, add to it, or perhaps delete it, and then based on the cost of that service. So we expect a report to also include some recommendations to allow us then to work with another group of people to determine the vision for Barnstable County going forward. Because as I've said before, unless you know where you are, it's pretty difficult to figure out where you want to go. And so we expect that can be completed in a short period of time. So we're kind of excited about that because it's something that we've talked about for the last, almost 2 years now. And it will finally, and then even though we may or may not accept the recommendations, but it will be the starting point for us to take a look at the future of Barnstable County, which will certainly not be the decision of the 3 people sitting here, but will certainly involve the community of the whole, and how that will be defined will come based on the data that we receive. And So that's pretty much all I have to say about that. But we do have an ordinance here, and I would like to ask Kendall Ayers, who's our department manager for the sewer betterment program, and he can explain the ordinance and ask any questions.
No, I'm all set, Phil. Thank you.
Okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Kendall Ayers. I'm the administrator of the Barnstable County Community Septic Management Loan Program, and we're presenting you with an ordinance for the authority to borrow an additional $10 million so that we can continue to loan money to the residents of Barnstable County for septic system improvements. As you're aware, the program offers a 5% interest rate loan and a 20-year repayment term. We have been before you on 2 separate occasions earlier. We borrowed on both of those occasions $10 million. Presently, we have roughly $2 million available, so we would like to make sure that money is forthcoming so we can continue to have this valuable program in place for the foreseeable future in Barnstable County. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
We'll schedule a hearing on this before the Finance Committee, tentatively next meeting at 3:30, but
Okay.
we'll let you know by public notice. But I mean, we can take some quick questions if you want, but that's the process. You guys, Paul, did you want to?
Thank you, Speaker. I have a question going back to your first item.
Oh, okay.
Mary Pat.
Okay. You're not, so we're done with the septic betterment for now? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ken.
Sure.
Which I commend you for, and sounds suspiciously like what used to be called zero-based budgeting. But will we, as a group, receive copies of those recommendations, whether or not you choose to implement them?
Yes, they will be a public document, so you will. This is a very transparent process, and we hope that not only will you be involved, but we hope along the line that citizens in the county will become involved in it as well.
I might add to that, because I think that's a very useful question to ask, is that one of the issues going, next year as you reorganize is to do everything you can as individual delegates to recruit members of your community to participate in this, because we have very limited ways of, let's say, of getting responses from the community, and each one of you are in each one of your communities, and I think there's an opportunity for all of you to reach out and identify people that would have some thoughts as to what they see as appropriate services, and this goes beyond asking your town officials, but you have constituencies, and I'm sure you're in communication with them, is to find out from them as to what they know about us, and what they know about us, what do they like, and what don't they like, and you would have in hand what our consultants have told us about where we are.
Okay, is there any other question, Tom?
2 quick points. One on that you were just mentioning on how you reach out, do outreach. There's an awful lot that's going on with social media right now, and counties and towns that are way out in front on how they communicate with their constituencies. And it's almost like email and websites are gone into, they're 101 social media. Now we're moving on. And Twitter and Facebook are ways that people are communicating, and the numbers of folks are staggering, of those that are out doing games and solving problems and doing those things. And many communities are beginning, to use that form to reach out to individuals to try to solve a problem. So if you have an issue like that you want to put out there, it may be advisable to talk to IT or others that are, further along on this, or, some teenager from the high school who knows just exactly how all this works, and that would be a different form of outreach that we haven't explored before.
I want to just mention that I took it upon myself to send a request to was it the ethics, the Attorney General's office, to find out what the limits were on running a social media program, because it would be my wish that after the first of the year that we start looking at setting up what I would call a virtual County Commissioners meeting, where we could both encourage and actually have, let's say, contact and intercommunication. The only drawback is that I want to get it out, just speaking for myself now, I want to get it out of the blogosphere where somebody is in a foxhole and throws flames, but to provide some opportunity for ordinary citizens to, let's say, to communicate with us. There's a low technology piece. Everybody's on a conference call. There's a higher one that would be a webinar. But the other part is that we don't get people who want to go from Bourne to Barnstable or Provincetown to Barnstable to be here. So I think that's an important step to take, and I know that if I'm fortunate enough to be returned to office, that would be a top priority for my goal for the next year.
The guy with the free ride.
No, Tom, I think that's very important, and most people who are in any leadership, towns are sending out the Wellfleetian newsletter, these types of things. So we are looking into that as part of that whole strategic plan, because there's a lot of things going on in the county and there are many hearings going on, even such as the one we had today, that some people know about it on one side, but other people might not know about it on the other. And they know about it after the fact. So I agree with you that we have to get more into the 21st century. That's the whole purpose of us, looking at where we are now as a county. How can we be more relevant in the next 10 years? Where is the county going to go, and how can we be relevant in that picture? And communication is a huge deal.
To my
In the era of communication, I read in the newspaper, and you may have seen it as well, that on October 29th, between 1 and 3 at the Orleans Town Hall, there's going to be a discussion between the National Academy of Science people who have been invited, and the public are invited. So if any of you have an interest in that topic, and I know there's been a lot of conversation about the NAS. And by the way, NAS is the National Academy of Science. That would be an opportunity for you to, let's say, to participate if you can come. So I think that since there has been a lot of conversation about it, and since there is going to be a public meeting outside of the county about it, so you've got to know that we're not sponsoring that, but we certainly would be there as observers, and would invite all of you to come.
And the other thing I wanted to mention was I applaud the scope of survey. It's very broad and it's very ambitious, and I could yield a lot of very interesting results. I would like to suggest that since we've funded a sum of money for this study, there may be things that come out of your scope of services and recommendations where they want you to focus on a particular area, just looking at some sort of reorganization aspects. Kept in the budget for those sort of things, but I'd really like to see that money maintained to do a couple of operational audits where you're looking at, we have, great growth in a terrific agency with the Cape Light Compact, and we should be having a look at how that money is being managed and what the flow of all that is and how it goes. And it's just, I think it's always wise for an organization to look at itself on how those things are operating. And that's a little different than just how we structure what's relevant, what isn't, and it's much more focused on, particularly when there are large sums of money, passing through a particular agency.
And I do sit on that, on the Cape Light Compact board, and and Barnstable does have has a member on that board that, and we get regular financial reports, which David Anthony, as you remember, and he's been very proactive with regard to, watching out for Barnstable's interest on the Cape Light Compact, and certainly because the commissioners have appointed me to be on it, I will assure you that, I'm trying to exercise as much fiscal oversight as possible. If there's a particular question with regard to flow, because their money is now coming more from ratepayer funding rather than money that's appropriated by the county, with the exception of Maggie Downey's, salary as the assistant town administrator, county administrator.
What I'm really suggesting is that within my own town, for instance, although we have very tight fiscal controls, we know where every dollar is going. We have done management audits on regulatory services. We've done it in the police department. We've done it with the school. We do it each year. We've done it with our own finance department. Now we're going to move to HR or perhaps the HYCC, which is a new organization. And it's a different look at when, you know, an organization grows rapidly and how you may be streamlining. And we always learn something that we can then make our employees more efficient and be sure that, you know, the flow of dollars as well. So,
Okay, I'll bring that up at the next board meeting as a, you know, as a suggestion for, you know,
I only use the Cape Lake example as an example. We have 15 departments. There may be others that you would want to choose first. But after you finish this whole, is the service relevant, there may be a system that we get into where it would be a benefit to all of us in terms of increasing the efficiency of the operation. Maybe not.
Okay, is there anything else? Yes, Marcia?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I actually want to thank Attorney Troy for the 2 memos. I thought they were great, and they were very informative, and I really did appreciate that he took the time. I assume everybody got them. One having to do with the Conservation Law Foundation suit, shall we not say non-suit, and the open meeting law. And I know he's gone about the septic betterment, but that is a widely successful program, and it's a fabulous thing. I would hope everybody, I know I will support it immensely. It's a great program, and I'm so thrilled that the county took it over and has just made it into unbelievable successful. Yeah, it really is a tribute to the county. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
George?
In response to your remark about getting information, Bill, the Providence Center is unique. Everything is on the Cape at the moment. Everything is centralized. Everything's within a long or short walking distance, whether it's a town hall or a hardware store or the Council on Aging, the churches, the post office, and one bank that does 82% of the business in town, all fairly close together. So that's where I put my ear to the ground. And it's too bad the Cape is spread out the way it has, but of course it's a lovely place. Nevertheless, the little towns like Katomet, for example, part of Bourne is a special place. But it's fairly easy where we are. The selectmen's meetings aren't attended very well, so you're not necessarily going to get information there, but if you get around, you will.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Teresa?
I just want to agree with what Tom was saying about looking at all the communication tools, because it ties very much into where the county is going. There's a whole kind of movement, I hate to use that word, around Government 2.0, and looking at how interaction is done on every single level. And in many places, the world is seismically changing, and I think as we look at what the future of the county is and what its roles are, that has to be integrated into it. And that ties not into communications, it ties into what kind of data does the county have and collect, how is it used, who can access it, how do we make that be open information, and how do we allow that information to become more powerful by setting it up in an open structure. So there's a lot of issues. Communication is merely the tip of where we're going, and to be effective, governmental entities need to be able to think and act like this.
No, I agree. I think information and we being a source of data is more and more important.
Anything else?
I have one more thing.
Sure.
In light of the fact that this is the last meeting that the commissioners will be here before the election and before there are new members to the Assembly, I want to just really recognize those members who have chosen not to run again, Charlotte, Strebel, and George. And
wait a minute. Is George changing his mind?
They're going to be.
Did he change his mind?
He may have, who knows?
Oh, that's right. It's the election. You're still going to be here. Well, that's okay. Because
they're going to be here.
We linger.
Yeah, but nevertheless,
Delegates linger on.
I know, you're right. But that's true. But nevertheless, you know, okay, I can do it again in December.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
After the dust.
But then wish those who are running for re-election good success.
Yes.
How's that? We'll leave it at that. And do the parties later.
All right, well, if that's you, then we may want to hang around for the next discussion. We have
we are.
Maggie is on for, so I
Right.
don't know if she wants to come forward now, but we're going to discuss the hiring process for the clerk's position. So thank you very much. And welcome, Maggie. We missed you.
Right across the parking lot, unfortunately. But anyway, I didn't realize you wanted me here, and otherwise I would have been here, so apologize for that. Oh, sorry, that's better. So anyway, just again, apologies to the Assembly. I didn't know that you wanted me here other than the memo that I presented to you, Ron, so that was my misunderstanding. I was asked by the Speaker to prepare a memorandum on the hiring process, which I did. I believe that was sent to all of you. It was dated October 4th and outlines the process that we have to follow as a public entity. It's a very standard process. I'm sure it's familiar to many of you from the public sector side. And I also, just for your behalf, outlined a potential schedule. So it is up to you or to the Speaker as to how you decide to move forward or to proceed. But all roads start with the job description, which you have a copy of. And that is the Speaker's, I'm deferring to Ron and as a Speaker, as to how he wants to proceed with getting comments and making amendments. So my role here is really to assist you, to answer any questions you have in the hiring process. But the first step is, as I said, is the job description, making sure you have a current one that reflects what you're looking for. Typically, this is the department head's responsibility, so that is why I deferred to the Speaker. And that's, I'll say enough for now and answer any questions that you might have on what I've sent to you.
I'm overwhelmed by all this deference that I've been given all of a sudden. Anyway, if you just to let you and the commissioners know, came up at the last meeting, and there was a discussion as to the job description, and it was sort of a chicken and egg discussion as to should we go out, put out an RFP, or put out a job, go through the hiring process, or should we decide exactly what the position entails first. So that's really why we're here again 2 weeks from now. So with that, I'll open it up to, I've been in communication with Maggie early on in the process and also with the commissioner, so I'll open it up to the Assembly delegates if they have any questions. You received the memos from Maggie on the proposed hiring process and the job description. So do we have any comments? It's something we haven't gone through. I think probably Julia and George are the only ones who have actually gone through this process before, such as it is. So, Julia, you want to?
Well, just a little background, which is that the position has been a part-time position because that's what was established in the first Assembly. And then when Diane was elected, there were various reasons why she was happy to have it continue to be part-time. But that's simply historical, and probably that issue has to be addressed more fully as to whether we want a full-time position, whether we want two part-time positions, etc. Secondly, I read the job description for the clerk's position, and I thought it was okay. I don't know, I think what made Diane a particularly valuable employee for us was her very well-developed political sense, in the best sense of that word, and how good she was at dealing with the politics of an elected body and its dealings with people outside. I don't know how you can write that fully. I think there's some things that hint at that in the job description. I don't know whether that's really anything that can be written down, but that would be certainly something I might be interested in, experience that would have led to that kind of sensibility.
Yes, Paul.
I looked at the job description, and perhaps it was easier for me because I haven't been here that long. And I tried to look at it from the point of view of somebody who might be applying for the position and also somebody who might be conducting the evaluation of the person who was in that position. And that was where it seemed to me that perhaps the job description itself is fine, but it doesn't prioritize the skills that it seems to me need prioritization. In other words, when Diane was the clerk, it was absolutely essential that she knew about county process, about the rules of procedure, about how things were to proceed, as opposed to, say, if she didn't know how to do a press release, I guess she could get somebody else to do that, or she could learn that. But if we got a clerk who wasn't familiar with all of those rules of procedure as a real priority, that would be pretty devastating. And for those of us who were new a couple of years ago, the fact that Diane was able to answer all of our dumb questions was really important. So I guess my suggestion would be that perhaps in conjunction with this job description, that a set of priority of skills that are sought, or of behavioral objectives, if I be pardoned for using that term, of what the clerk is able to do and not do, would be helpful both for applicants and for people looking at the candidates.
Ron, if I may, Speaker. You should know, and I should have prefaced this, the job description for the clerk was prepared by Diane, so she was instrumental in assigning the essential functions. This is a standard form of a job description. It focused not on the person, but on the position, which is where we find ourselves in now. You could say that, listening to hearing what you said, Paul, I would say that you would looking for somebody who has knowledge of the legal processes, government operations, and office administration, somebody who understands the organization of government, and we can insert languages of familiarity with county government and add experience. But I think the basic meat and potatoes of the knowledge, ability, and skill sets are in here. They can be elaborated on, and I look to you to mark it up or to give me some thoughts, and I can send it back to you, trying to capture what you're getting at. But you're also raising, what I look on the HR piece is another aspect of the hiring process, which is doing an assessment of the position. It's usually, it's a fee for service. It's called a DISC assessment, where you scope out the position, whether you're looking for somebody who is of a high analytical ability, more of a high social ability, and you then ask your finalists to take a potential assessment that looks at their skills, and you look for matching. That's something that you can elect to do once you get into the interview process, should you decide. We typically have done this in hiring some of our department heads. Typically, I'll use the example of the Cape Light Compact, when hiring its energy efficiency manager, is looking for somebody who has an analytical thought process, an eye for detail, very thorough, as opposed to somebody who's a little bit more more outgoing, a policymaker, timid, and doesn't spend the time on reading the details. So that's a tool you can use once you get into the hiring process, but that would be up to your committee that Ron would appoint. But it is available. We have used it. We've used it very successfully. But it benchmarks the position so that you try, and it's not perfect. It's just it's a tool. It's an assessment. One of the many things you can use in the HR world to hire somebody. But it kind of get to me when you were going over your issues. That's what I said. Oh, they may find some value. Your hiring committee may find some value in that, so that you benchmark what you're looking for. And then the people that you make your finalist list, you use that as an additional tool to make sure they have the skill sets that you're looking for.
Okay. Paul, you want to continue?
Just to add, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but it seems to me my issue was one of priorities. And it seems to me that in the job description, everything seems more or less equal. And I'm saying I don't think it is equal in terms of the important jobs that the clerk does. There are some things that are more important than others. And so that, whether your instrument that you're talking about would do that, or whether a separate sheet of paper that would perhaps identify those priorities would be helpful, is my suggestion.
Okay. Marcia, did you have something to say?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yeah, again, I come back to, I would like to start the discussion is the job going to stay 0.75, 30 hours a week, and then I have been told it may not even really be 30, but that's what the budget is. And it's $54,317 at 3/4 time, which for the public is $34.82 an hour at 30 hours. I mean, it's a great job. See, I actually think it should be a full-time job. I think it's a great job for, it could be a former town administrator, a lawyer. There's great possibilities here, and I guess I would like to have that discussion of what are we going to do with the position? Are we going to leave it as is, or are we going to make it a full-time position and take all those things that encumbers that?
Well, we'll have an opportunity. I mean, if Maggie wants to comment, that's fine, but when we convene, we will also discuss this as an assembly, so...
Oh, we're not having that discussion now?
Well, we could, I mean, but basically, when we convene on that, we won't have Maggie here. Unless we suspend the rules, we won't be able to ask the committee, so I'm giving her an opportunity to respond to questions now. We can certainly suspend the rules in the further discussion when the assembly convenes, as you see on your agenda, so... I guess the question that Marcia is asking is, has you as the assistant administrator and treasurer and the commissioners looked at the financial implications of this? All right, I don't know if I'm giving you the wrong titles, but what have you had a discussion on the financial implications as far as putting together a budget and staffing and so on?
Yes, we have. And Marcia, to get to your question, because it's kind of both a policy and a financial question, you are correct. This is a 3/4 position. The decision as to whether or not you want to have a full-time position now, you have, the dollars will work. Diane was a full-time 3/4 time SPT Step 8. She was at the top of the salary schedule. So there are funds available to begin somebody. Typically, you hire somebody at a Step 1 so that they have room for growth over time and to develop in the job. So the funding is there. A budget would have to be prepared, and any overruns, you'd have to have a supplemental and ask for accessing the salary reserve fund, which when Diane passed away, or if she had left, we have to pay out all of her accrued time. So the funds, there will already be a shortfall in that line item that will require accessing. And this happens all the time. People leave constantly. Several people leave, and you have to cash out 4 weeks of accrued vacation time, sometimes much more than that. And those funds come out of the salary reserve. So the funds are available. Should you decide to do that, I would ask, and this is not my responsibility, I would ask Mark to come back and put together and project out. We can't, this is what you had for dollars. This is what we had to, I used, it's kind of flip, but the word cash out. This is what we had to cash out to Diane's family. This is where you are hiring a temporary clerk and adding that on. This is the negative, and that negative has to be funded from the salary reserve. Should you decide to fund full-time, half-time, that's your decision, that then would just have to be built out. That analysis can all be done. We just are waiting for some direction as to what you want to do.
Okay, yes, Julia.
Maggie, given that it's my understanding that the reason for the 3/4 time or whatever percentage is historic and was Diane's original wish at the time, and it was the tradition for the 2 years before she came. Have you and Mark, and possibly she, ever had further discussions about whether this should be 2 part-time people or 1 full-time, or any guidance from the administration?
When we did the initial analysis and prepared the job descriptions, and we try very hard in the HR field not to work around the personalities, but sometimes unfortunately that plays into it. The job was discussed as a full-time position, but because of Diane's institutional knowledge, she was able to get it done at a 3/4 time. So the job was originally, when we did this job description, scoped and prepared for a full-time position. Diane's preference and her abilities and skills after being here for she was here almost 20 years, her ability, she didn't need to work full-time, and she worked frequently as an exempt employee. She worked frequently at home. So there were days and weeks where she put in a full-time week or more, was compensated at 3/4 times, but that suited her lifestyle and her needs. And again, we try very hard not to work around people, but it happens. So this is a full-time position when it was scoped and crafted as a job description. And somebody walking into the position is going to have a steep learning curve, depending upon where they come from and their background. Some are going to be steeper than others.
Well, you can probably hang around in case we come up with something we haven't thought of. John, did you have something?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Maggie, I'm assuming that you're going to do the job search. You're going to put this out in the world of whoever would like to become the next speaker. How far a range do you project, or how do you advertise a position like this?
Well, there are a couple of things. I work with, and I'm going to say Ron, so I would help Ron out, and I would draft a job ad. Ron would look at it, circulate it to whoever he's appointed as his team. So you craft your job description, and you determine how far and wide you want to advertise. I gave in my schedule enough time that we could run in the Boston Globe, if that's what you decide to do, or just run in the Cape Cod Times. Depending upon the position of the Executive Director of the Cape Cod Commission, we ran in National Planning Association magazines, ICMA. So I'll look for some dialogue, and you should have that amongst yourselves as to how wide you want to advertise. At a minimum, we are required by law to advertise in the Cape Cod Times, because that is our designated for equal opportunity employment EEO. That's where we advertise. So it would be up to the board if you want to broaden your search. I could run it in the Beacon for MMA. I could put it in the Boston Globe. There are planning associations and other functions. Lawyers, depending upon what your feedback is, and that usually is a give and take with the department, which in this case is 15 of you. So I welcome any thoughts about what you want to do or where you want to advertise.
Right. Just to follow up on John's question, obviously the clerk is appointed along with the other officers at the first meeting of the year, when the assembly convenes. So that's one time frame that we have to deal with. Michelle's appointment as temporary clerk ends before that. So, I mean, it's not a big deal. We're all going to cooperate in doing this, but we have to look at those time frames. Do we want the clerk to be appointed by this assembly, and then presuming that they will be appointed by the next assembly, or are we going to say, well, the hell with it, or the heck with it, and we're not going to do it? My understanding, I've had this discussion with, for instance, when we looked at the contracts with the town employees, and I always feel personally that it's best to have the people who are in place now, who understand the job and stuff, make the decision, rather than have a new assembly come in, even though they're the ones who are going to serve with the clerk. They're going to say, we got a clerk? Geez, what do you know? So I would like to see it happen within this assembly before the first of the year, before we convene a new assembly. That's my only requirement.
And the schedule that you have in front of you really gives you your outside parameters in order to make that happen. So if dates slip, if tasks slip, we're going to not make that, because I'm already out to or you'll have a special meeting. Actually, I shouldn't say that. You could always convene a special meeting, but the schedule here was put to address Ron's point of trying to have this body appoint the speaker. If you decide not to, then your dates can be revised according. Clerk. What did I say? Oh, speaker. Sorry.
All right. Of course, the next body will get an opportunity to appoint the clerk too, because we do that on a routine basis. But hopefully, they'll trust our judgment. Okay. Is that Leo?
Do we specifically have an advertising budget for this position, or does it fall under the general?
All positions are within the commissioner's budget and the MC shared cost budget.
Because that certainly would be a consideration for Ron on the subcommittee to find out what kind of advertising budgets they're either limited to or going to be exploring. The other question I have, and to you, and you may not be able to answer this, but in regards to a full-time position versus the part-time position, do you have any insight on what the job market is out there, and what kind of applicants would we be better served putting out a job description, or not a job description, but notice for employment for a full-time position, anticipating getting a larger return of interest. And I'm not going to hold you to this. I'm a farmer and I don't hire people, so I have no idea. I have to rely on other people's who've done this before to suggest if there is a difference between the two, full-time or part-time.
It's a very subjective, it is a good job market, as long as you're not an engineer, because we can't find any of those. So I think you'll get a good turnout. It's going to depend upon the candidates, Leo. Some are going to want they'll be looking for full-time work, and others may be very happy with a 3/4 time. You can always advertise for a full-time and hire a 3/4 time position. You can negotiate the hours, but you should always advertise for the higher, a full-time and negotiate down, because then you get the broader applicant. So it really depends. It depends upon the position and the applicant pool and the most qualified candidates.
Go ahead, Leo. Follow up.
In Ron's comment that he would like to see this assembly, in fact, go through the whole process, and I understand you the timeline that shows that. But isn't there any concern of an applicant taking a position where their rehire, if you will, is going to be in jeopardy within 30 days of them being hired? I mean, I know that the argument can be made that it's probably not that it's not going to happen, but let's face it, legally, if I understand the process correctly, we would only be hiring this person for less than 30 days, and their rehire would be subject to the new assembly.
That's where the tension comes. It's an excellent point. You need to articulate to your candidates the process, and the process has a built-in conflict. The conflict is the assembly appoints the clerk, but the commissioners have the hiring and firing authority. So the conflict is, say you don't want to reappoint the clerk, you have to work with the commissioner's office, the commissioners, to have a termination. I mean, I think that was deliberately built into as a check and balance as that. But you do need to articulate the parameters of the position, which is the commissioners are the appointing authority. They are the hiring authority of this position.
90-day probation. It falls within this.
Correct. So that's one piece, but you would also have to let them know that they are subject to an annual appointment of the clerk. And it is a little disconcerting to somebody who's leaving a position, and but that's just the world we have to live in. I have to work with that. Bill also asked me to remind you that all positions have a probationary period where you're an employee at will, meaning you can be terminated without cause, without going through the process as identified in the personnel policy.
Just a quick comment. I know some of us have served as selectmen. In my town, the selectmen have a veto power over hires. We can't hire anybody, but we can, within 15 days in department head, we could say, we don't want this person. So they're informed when they get the job that they have to go through another hoop. And as far as I know, at least in Chatham, they all made it. So hopefully that'll happen too. Somebody who hasn't commented yet, Marcia, and then I'll go to Paul.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And because of that, I actually would ask that this assembly do not, if we could get it all done between now and before January, that's fine. But I think we're already at the end of October, literally. I don't think this process is going to be done. We have to talk about, what the job is, many different things. You've got to create the ad, you've got to advertise it. I can't see that we're going to get this done with this assembly. And just because of what Leo just said, and you, I think for the candidates, whoever applies, we should throw it over to next year. I think there'll be enough of us that will be here from this year to next, and I don't think this is an earth-shattering thing. This is just a hiring process. And I would ask that we not rush into this and not try to figure out by, December 15th, which is our second meeting, that we're going to appoint somebody. But can I also make another comment? We've never appointed Michelle. We've never had a vote for that. Am I correct? So I think, number one, we need to do that. And then I guess the other question was, you're telling me her appointment ends at a certain point? I didn't realize.
I have to defer to Maggie on that.
It was a 90. If you were just to back step a couple, when we appointed Michelle, it was not as the clerk, because Diane was planning on recovering and coming back. So we did an emergency hire, which allows the commissioners to suspend all of their requirements for advertising to appoint somebody because it's critical to the operations of the department, which is what they did. And that has a 90-day time frame that is in our policies. That's self-imposed. It's not a law. That's what we elected in our policies. So Michelle's term serves for 90 days. If you recall, when we were at the August meeting, I don't think you had a quorum. We had the language to appoint her as the acting, and I forget, not actually the official clerk, but I agree with you that some action should now occur, but the commissioners have the authority to hire for an emergency basis 90 days. They could also, and I would have to amend that to make it longer, but that would be waiving, they'd have to vote to waive their existing policies and be very specific on what they were doing for this individual position.
Ron, can I just say, then if we make the act of appointing Michelle as temporary clerk until the position is filled, then can that signal to the Board of Commissioners then to do what you just said, to override your 9 days? Then I think we should consider that, because then that takes us out of this timeline that I'm concerned, because I think there's a lot of discussion to be had here, because it's a very interesting position that we're at, to be able to fill this position and to really view it as what do we want to do. It's a hard act to follow, Diane's. So I don't want anyone to follow in that respect, because that is a hard act that we need to create a whole different, or look at it a little bit different way. So I'm concerned about the timeline, and I guess I would entertain how to go forward of having Michelle appointed as our clerk until the position is filled. Then I would look to the speaker and or anyone to help me in how to go forward, because we're in an unusual position.
Yes.
Thank you.
Charlotte, you have a comment?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I agree wholeheartedly with what Marcia has said. And if she is making a motion, I would second it to proceed.
Move and second it to appoint Michelle Springer as the.
We have to convene, I believe. So when we do it, yeah. Then why don't we wait? And I will be happy. I'm happy to do that. And thank you, Charlotte.
Just to go back a little bit, I did have this on the agenda at the August meeting, and I intended to quite fully to put it on the agenda at the September meeting, but I was informed, and I can't even remember, that it wasn't necessary all of a sudden. Oh, well, that's what it was?
That was part
okay,
of it.
so that's what changed it. It wasn't...
Right.
Right.
Yes, that was key.
Yeah, okay, well, I just... Okay, so it wasn't necessary to appoint for a temporary, but now it is. Okay, we understand that. All right, are we done with poor Maggie? No, one more. Paul still...
Just one quick question. You mentioned that Diane did a lot of work out of her home. Is that part of the expectation, or incorporated into the possibility of the job description, that a person could work part-time not in the office here, or is it anticipated they would work?
You're asking, there are two issues. Can we try it? There's a telecommuting policy. That's a different issue, which the county does not have a policy right now. It's public employees. It's a very slippery slope. We wrestle with it all the time over that issue, and we have erred on the side that we want our employees here as a public face. The issue of working from home is Diane is a department head, like me, we work all the time, 7 days a week, all the time. And that's what we're paid for. And that's what she did. She gave you guys 110% of her time, because she looked at, that was her. Not everyone does that, but she did that. She went above and above for you guys. So that was a personal choice.
Okay. Tom?
We went through several scenarios of how you could, whether it was full-time or part-time, and were you suggesting on the one that if the individual were hired as a full-time person, there would be the salary reserve to make up that money, and we would still keep a part-time person? Or was that one scenario that you were putting out there? Or if we went to full-time person, it would therefore, we would be combining the two monies to come up with a one full-time person. I wasn't clear on that.
I was not making any suggestions. There are two different positions. There's the position of the clerk, and there's the position of the department assistant. And my comments were on keeping a full-time assembly clerk and not addressing it all and keeping the part-time department assistant. I haven't focused on that from just a purely managerial perspective. I would, Maggie Downey's recommendation would be that you bring in your new clerk, and any changes that you decide to make or not make should be done through a budget process, which would not be, would either be FY11 or 12.
So if we made the issue to go full-time, there would be the operation you described of going to the salary reserve to make it up?
Yes.
Okay, that's clear.
I'm sorry if I wasn't clear on that.
That's clear, thank you.
Okay. Are we, George?
What was, excuse me, what was Diane paid?
I knew you were going to ask me that because I walked. Did you? I don't have my salary. I walked out without the
I
office
have
without
it.
my salary schedule.
Diane was paid in this budget $54,317.
Would you repeat that?
And it says for three-quarter time, .75, which equals 30 hours a week.
Yeah.
So that's what, and then it equals out to $34.82 an hour. So
Which
I
is,
have it.
that's your, do you have, are you looking at the budget or the salary schedule? Okay.
I was told.
But as you said, Maggie, she was high on the steps.
She was at
there,
the top of the steps.
So with a new employee, we may have some room there to play because they'll be hired maybe at a lower salary. They will not be hired at a step
That
A.
was the salary. That was not the salary, but that was the salary plus benefits, 54,000?
No,
So no,
that's
just the
just
straight
salary.
salary.
That's
Plus
the salary.
she had benefits also on
Right.
top of that, yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, are we ready? If we are, then first I have to go through communications from public officials and communications from members of the public. Hearing none, Mary Lou Pettit will not be here, so I'll now convene the assembly, and we will begin once again with the hiring process for the clerk's position. And you can stay there. Yes.
Mr. Speaker, as part of the hiring process, I'd like to make the motion to appoint Michelle Springer as our acting clerk until the position is filled.
I second the motion.
Moved and seconded. Is there any further comment on that? Hearing none, all those in favor, yeah, John?
Do you have to amend that, or do you have to state it's a maximum of 90 days?
No.
No, because I'm saying until the position is filled. I think that's how I was hoping that then you can go back to the commissioners and they can make their appropriate waiver for us to do this.
Okay.
Yeah.
This may be a procedural matter, but should I ask Michelle Springer whether she wants to do this or not? Or are we going to stick her here whether she wants to or not? Well, I presume that she's willing to do it. Yes. Okay. Leo?
Actually, that was one of the things I was going to bring up. I mean, when Michelle was appointed on the 90-day basis by the commissioners, we were all anticipating that Diane was going to come back. So I know we joked about it, but I do think we need to ask if she's willing to stay on, number one. Number two, you know, I certainly support this. I think we should do it, but again, with all this they call that the bylaws and things that we're under the gun with now, I don't think it's appropriate at this time to make a motion because it's not on the agenda. I don't think we should be doing it. I think we should put it on the agenda for within 2 weeks, so it's out there and it's done properly. Again, it might be within the scope of talking about hiring a new position, but I don't know, I just don't feel comfortable.
I'm going to anticipate what Tom Keyes might have to say. Maybe I'm not, but
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
internal organizational matters are not covered by the what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, you know, we are a legislative body, and we cannot force since we're going to have elections, we cannot force a new body to automatically appoint. So we can't leave it open-ended that this person will serve the position until filled. The new body has that authority as an elected body to make the appointment. So they'll still have to make that appointment come January when the new assembly takes office. So that's just, you know, procedurally, that's just what has to happen.
Mr. Speaker, based on that, I will amend my motion to appoint Michelle as temporary until the end of this session.
Okay.
I accept it. I accept that.
Okay.
As the seconder.
Are we all clear on that? Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay.
You don't get to vote.
Just, I'd have to get the, you suspend the rules?
I move we suspend the rules to allow Maggie to
Okay,
speak.
all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Maggie, what do you have to say?
A question?
Yeah.
Do you want this hiring to coincide with you starting the process, or are you asking to not start anything until after the elections? Because you can start, you can have a long...
We're going to start the process
All right.
as quickly
And
as possible.
Perfect. Okay, that just wanted, because I can work with, I guess I will work with the speaker if he wants me to give a new schedule as to when I need comments back on the job description and all the, I hate all the nitty-gritty details to move it forward, but I don't want to lose it, so I just want to make sure I understood what you were asking.
Yeah, okay. I'll open up the discussion. Just have one comment is that, you know, all of us, I think everyone here worked with Diane and never another clerk, you know, and she had a unique approach toward it, and she was very accessible and so on. My personal feeling is that we shouldn't use that as a template to hire another clerk. I mean, she made the job what she made it. For instance, she was always available at her house. I could always call her at her house, and she encouraged me to do that, you know. But one wonders going forward whether that's something that somebody else would want to take on, or whether you want to move toward like has been suggested, a full-time position where they'd be available here and so on. So that's one thing. And you know, it's going to be tough. But also the other thing I just have to say as we enter the discussion is that it'd be very unusual to find someone who's worked in a similar environment to this. I mean, we have our own rules and regulations and so on. On the other hand, it's a limited universe. It's not like hiring a lawyer where, you know, anything can happen and he takes any client that walks in the door. We have, the assembly is what it is and county government is what it is, and so someone coming in could, you know, if they have a good mind and they're willing to do it and they're adaptable, could basically put their hands around our rules and how it operates in a short time, you know, so, and you don't have to worry about, you know, how they work in Congress and so on. So with that, I'll open it up to discussions. Leo, you want to start?
I'll go right down the list. First of all, the job description, I feel comfortable with the job description as it's written. I don't think we should be delving into redoing it at all. I think that all the things that were mentioned previous to what we may be looking at an individual for can be addressed as Maggie stated in the actual advertisement itself, you know, something that someone who has some expertise in governmental affairs and things like that. I don't think that stuff needs to be incorporated in the job description, but I do think when we get the subcommittee formulated to actually help Maggie put together the actual notice that's going to go out in the newspaper, some of those things can be expressed in that. And the third thing is, I think that because the budget, without having the exact accurate numbers in front of me, but feeling that we've had someone who left at the higher step of payment, and that you know, we will be hiring certainly at a lower step so that people have ability to grow in the position, that we should actually be looking for a full-time position. Advertising it as such, and start moving forward. And as Maggie stated, if things, applicants come through and the subcommittee looks at certain things, there are deals that can be struck if somebody decides that, you know, they want to take a smaller position or a part-time position. But I think from this stage on, we really should be looking at a full-time position. I think the funds are there, and we might as well take that opportunity and move forward. So those are three things I think we should talk about today, and that's my opinion on three of them.
Okay. Yes, Julia.
Yes, I agree. I think it should be advertised as a full-time position. And I'm willing to go along with the current job description.
We get an assent from Charlotte also on that. So, okay. Anything else on the full-time? I agree on the full-time. I think it's time that this body has moved a long way in 20 years, and I think that first of all, I believe in giving people full-time jobs if they need a job. You know, that's one thing, and also I think that having someone accessible. I mean, Diane was terrific. I could call her at home, but it'd be nice to have someone at the other end of the line if myself or any of the delegates have a problem or a question that we can call, and if we have to interact with the rest of the administration, with you and Mark and the commissioners, we can do it through that person rather than have to call around and, you know, get a note. So-and-so is not here at this time and or on vacation. I found out, unfortunately, and maybe I didn't deal with it very well over the last 2 months or so how valuable the clerk is in being able to talk to people, because if you start calling around to people and you just can't reach anybody, and it's nice to have someone here who will do that work and get everything organized. So, Leo,
do you want a motion to, on these things so we can move forward, or do you think just a consensus is okay?
Well, it's the commissioners are actually going to do the hiring. We do the appointing, but, like I say, we're working together, so.
Well, it seems like the consensus of the Assembly is to go for a full-time position. I think at some point we should notify Mark to at least come up with the base salary.
You want to make a motion on that, Leo? You can.
I mean, that's what I'm asking. Is it necessary, or do we just need?
It's not necessary, but.
I mean, it's up to you. I'll do whatever you want.
I mean, if we found the greatest clerk in the entire world, but he could only work 30 hours, I mean, or he.
But even for the advertising purposes, we're going to need to know what that base salary is going to be.
Marcia?
Well, it seems to be the consensus is that it's a full-time position. Everybody seems to be okay with the job description, so maybe we don't need to. So I think we're like three-quarters way there.
Yes.
Right?
Keep going.
Okay, I'm going to move it along here. I think the only thing is because there's going to be a small subcommittee from the Assembly doing the interviewing.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess the next thing is that do you want to take names of people who are interested in doing that? Take names and numbers and move forward on it.
Yeah, that's the only thing I talked to Maggie about this, and she is going to sit on the subcommittee. The only thing is that I feel that the privacy of the people who apply in the initial stages should be protected. In other words, if there are 20 people who apply, a lot of them may already have jobs, and some of you have already gone through this. When the field is narrowed to, this is how it normally goes, the field's narrowed to, let's say, 3 or 4 people, then they're out, and the Assembly can discuss among themselves who they feel is the best policy. So I think a limited subcommittee of maybe 3 people, and also Maggie will sit in as basically the personnel director. You don't have a vote, but you'll be there. And the commissioners can look over our shoulder too, just so we don't feel that we're slighting them. And that would be how I could see it. So I'm trying to get into a limited universe because I don't like to spread resumes around. It's not a good practice. So yes.
What you're saying, Ron, is that you would let Maggie whittle down?
No.
Okay.
The committee will whittle.
800 applicants come in. We'll whittle down the Assembly.
I can walk you through
the small group of the.
Would you like me to walk you through just so that there's no questions?
Go right ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm looking to Ron to tell me who is on his interview committee. And I agree with, that's Ron's choice, whether it's 3 people, as long as it's I hear you saying not a quorum, so they're not public meetings. And I do have to say Commissioner Flynn has volunteered her time from experience in HR. That's your choice. What will happen is all the resumes come in, they're maintained on file. You will get a book of all copies. I don't screen them. You get copies of the job. Each person on the interview committee will receive a copy of the job description, a draft of suggested interview questions, and all of the resumes and cover letters that come in. And then our role will be to have a meeting where we have, and then you screen. So I give you a ranking sheet, so hopefully you've done your homework. So when you come in, you say, here's my top, here's my top. You discuss amongst the committee who you want to bring in for interviews, and then we finalize the questions. And then on my end, I make all the arrangements, and that's why picking Wednesdays, knowing your schedules, you do it on Wednesdays. That's again up to the committee, and bring in the candidates for interviews, and then you need to make some decisions as to, I'll be looking for you to tell me, are you going to bring just a finalist to the whole assembly, or are you going to bring, that becomes the committee's decision and internal discussions. But I'm just there to move you along and keep you out of trouble.
The comment is, Commissioner Doherty and I just went through this last year with the hiring of the head of the manager of the Regional Transit Authority, and it was a very similar process. We had not quite a small group. We probably had, I think, 7 or 9. So it worked out very well, and in the way, and people came to a consensus. It wasn't like, well, we're recommending you 3-2, and then there's somebody sitting in the hallway. I understand other towns have had and have had problems, but generally, I think let's hope that we come to a consensus, and that's how it's going to work. Leo?
Sorry.
Let's get to Tom.
I think the question was, are you going to select once we decide on the size of the committee, if it's 5 people,
Yeah.
and we wanted, Mary Pat, and we wanted, we had Maggie, and we had 3, whatever number we were going to add to that, are you going to make those appointments? Or I think Marsha was asking, would you like individuals who are interested to submit their names, and then you would select from that pool?
Oh, sure, I'm not going to appoint anybody who doesn't want to do it.
So what you want is you would like interested members
Yes.
to contact you, and then you will select from that pool?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And some people have already contacted me in anticipation of this. So, Leo?
The criteria that Maggie just laid out for us on how things happen, I think it's great, and I agree with all of them. My only maybe addition to that would be that I would hope that out of the subcommittee would come maybe 2 applicants, one being the preferred, number 1, this is the one that we would like you to hire, and then giving me the ability, because I didn't sit, if I'm not on the subcommittee, to at least see 1 or possibly 2 of the other candidates that were at least in question. That way there, instead of just bringing forward just the 1 candidate, gives me an opportunity to see at least 2 others. If that's in conflict of the Privacy Act or something, I certainly understand that, but I think it might be better to at least have 2. And
Yeah, when you're faced with the choice, it's always better to have more than 1. Okay, well, we seem to be making some progress here. I'm going to start this process as soon as possible, so those who are interested, please let me know. And Maggie will be there more as a staff assistance to us. I mean, she knows the rules and regulations on hiring. She knows the time frame for advertising and so on. And once again, this is it's a county employee. We appoint them, but it's county employees, so they have to go under the same rules as every other county employee, and it's very important. So.
Mr. Speaker, if I may, one more question, because you are ticking through these. Could I get some input as to where you'd like to advertise a position? Because that will help me define a timeline. Any thoughts? That's, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'm thinking myself that to narrow it, scope, the MMA bulletin would be fine, but I wouldn't want somebody to come down here from Boston or to relocate for this job. For some reason, as Leo brought out, you could be gone tomorrow, so I mean in 90 days. I would think we'd get a Cape resident, if not, but unless you want to go.
I was going to say, Mr. Speaker, I disagree. I think why not? I mean, it's actually a comment that Tom just made. You could have a former town manager who wants to retire to the Cape, and this is a great job that he's like, maybe if she or she, I shouldn't say he, they're 54 and they want to work another 10 years.
What do you think, the Boston Globe then? I mean,
I would think I think this is a great job, and I think that the wider net we cast, and remember, we're not paying anybody to move here. They got to move on their own, and by the way, it'll help our economy on the housing market if someone buys a house. So we should look at it that way.
Mr. Speaker, I am totally in agreement with going off Cape to advertise.
Okay, thank you. I've got my direction, the Cape Cod Times to Beacon and the Globe, and that will then give me my time frame for a schedule, because the Beacon is a monthly newsletter, so all of that will work.
I stand corrected. I'm reminded that the town manager in Bourne lives in Vermont, so I mean that's
Okay. All right.
Yep.
I believe the town manager in Wellfleet lives in New York State. and commutes. No, but while we're talking about, Mr. Speaker, I agree. We should cast a wide net, but I would really have a preference for a person that was local. I mean, or willing to move here. I mean, I know it's not part of the absolute job description as we've gone through the current county administrator, but local on-scene people is what we really need.
Okay. Is there anything else on that? Maggie, you?
Sorry, because I don't see you very often. I want to make sure I'm capturing. So my next steps, if I understand, the first is to address the vote that was taken relative to Michelle Springer and to make sure that the personnel policy is presented to the commissioners next week to reflect your vote. So that's my first task. I will also present an intent to fill the vacancy with the existing job description and add a full-time position, correct?
Yes.
All right. I will take a stab at crafting the job announcement, which I will again give to you, Ron, to do with whatever you decide.
Okay, well, I'll probably...
I would recommend you give it to your committee once it's established.
Yes. How soon do you think you're going to have that down?
I think we have some time because this job is not going to run until the December MMA bulletin, given that it's October. I'm pretty sure I missed the November bulletin deadline.
Yeah.
So, but let me work on all of that tomorrow and the end of this week, and I will get something to you, to Michelle via email to send out to you with a tentative schedule reflecting that the actual hiring and all of that will be in the January timeframe, not the December timeframe here, which I think works with what I just received about where you want to advertise.
Okay.
And if I've missed anything else, I'll email you, but I think I've got my marching orders.
Okay, well, hopefully this will be a good process, and it's always nice to have a job available for somebody, you know, especially in this economy, and all right. Well,
Mr. Speaker, one more thing. How are you going to determine the salary? Are you going to kind of determine, or are you going to take the same, I don't know if it was...
No, if I understood what you said, it's a full-time position, and I advertise at a step 1. That's just county policy. We advertise...
So we don't have, yeah, but is it a grade something?
It's an MP31, and because I left my salary schedule at home, but at my desk. I'll email you what that is. She was at the top end of step 8. This is going to be a step 1, and that's how we'll be advertised.
It could be like 45,000 or something. Just in case anyone's watching and they're going to get their resume
I'm totally
going,
guessing. I will have that for you for the next meeting. I don't remember.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, if we're settled on that, we can move ahead. And thank you very much, Maggie. And
thank you.
We'll now have any reports from the committees. We had a meeting of the Government Regs Committee today that was very well attended. And it was received considerable comment, and we, at the end of the time allotted, we recommended that we would continue the meeting till a later date, which most probably will be at 2 o'clock on the next time we meet, which is November 3rd. So anybody's interested in attending that meeting besides the heads of the committees, feel free to do so.
Mr. Speaker?
Yes.
A question about that and a comment. I've gotten a lot of emails from my constituents who live near windmills, and I've told them I'm not going to get involved in their quarrel with the town over the windmill, but I will be very interested now about the proposed regulations. I gather, I couldn't get to here today, but I'll try for the next one, but I gather we didn't have a lot of testimony from the Cape Cod Commission yet as to how they determined their guidelines.
The only comment we got was that they limited their jurisdiction. The only comment, and I don't want to paraphrase them, but I'll defer to the other members of the committee. They said that when it was questioned why they didn't go further in extending their jurisdiction to other wind farms and so on, when they said that it was due to public comment at their hearings. Due to public comment in the hearings, they were discouraged from going further in restriction, and that's the only comment they get. Plus, the ordinance is very narrowly drawn. I mean, this has to do with the thresholds only on those towers that come under their jurisdiction through other reasons. In other words, they're not extending their jurisdiction to every wind tower, but just those who would come through to their jurisdiction.
But I guess my question was, what I gathered from the emails from my constituents was that they were not happy with the proposed distances.
Right.
So my question is, how, if we're going to vote on these or reject them, how are we going to come up with some knowledge about these distances?
Well, we could forward you some of the information that was given to us if you have a few days to go over it. And there was a lot of information. Also, you received, well, you know, we only got one side today, but have any other members of the committee have anything to say about that? Leo, you were here.
Yeah, the only thing, again, you know, because we haven't reached a decision yet, and we're still receiving testimony. So, but the only thing I do want to clarify is that I think there was a little bit of misunderstanding on the setback requirements. The setback requirements presented by the Cape Cod Commission were under the safety aspect. And they only took into consideration snow being thrown off the wind blades, or if the tower itself were to fall over, or if a blade were to come loose. That's where they came up with the 1.5 times the distance of the height of the tower. So if it was a 500-foot tower, it would be 750 feet. Under the noise section, it was really wide open and broad as to what the required setback could become after the ambient noise level was projected as to how far it would be away from residences. So a lot of people were kind of concluding that the only setback was that under that safety part, and that unfortunately just is not true. There was other setbacks. The noise was one, and also the flicker. There was a section of the bylaw which looked at which addressed flicker, and all of those, when someone was proposing a site, would have to be figured in as to the location of the tower.
Okay, so that the people who are particularly upset are perhaps not fully aware of those other issues coming up in a permitting process. So this was, would that be how it would work? And then it would be up to some permitting group to determine those other things? But who would that permitting group be?
Again, under the noise, specifically under the noise section, and again, I just put it away. So, but there was only 3 sections: safety, noise, and flicker. Under the noise regulation, I believe the language stated that the Cape Cod Commission would hire a study group to actually do the testing of the noise, but they wouldn't be paid by the Cape Cod Commission, to be paid by the applicant. And that information would then be transmitted into the location of the tower.
Actually, what it is, the noise and the flicker refer to a technical bulletin that isn't written.
Which weren't available.
So they're very vague. They use vague language like, some issue, some study, some will be done. But there's no definition of what a threshold is. And it actually has a figure in it, is the 1.5 times the base measurement. Everything else is open.
Given that we don't have a lot of turnout, and this was a lot of turnout, and in case I'm not here because of work next time, I would suggest that we make it clear to the Cape Cod Commission that we would have difficulty voting for something that had to do in this kind of situation with a future technical bulletin. That would be very hard for me.
Well, yeah, it jumped out at us that they were just simply, they're empowered to pursue regulations that would be later defined in future bulletins. So, yeah. But, we didn't. Yeah, they've done that before, but.
As many, such a controversial.
Once again, I can't emphasize, we tried to keep the discussion within limits, but I can't emphasize that the power of the Cape Cod Commission in these few instances when the wind towers come under their jurisdiction is very limited, you know what I'm saying? And it's not, there seemed to be a sentiment in the room that this was a pro or anti-wind tower thing, and they make impassioned pleas on both sides, but our jurisdiction in approving this ordinance is very limited, but I agree. Hopefully, maybe Mr. Nizwicki or some of his people can be here and they can further clarify exactly where we're going. Because, yeah, Tom?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You do have an open hearing, so I'm going to be careful with my comments. But why are you even considering this when it's not complete? It's as if you're looking to get permission on one aspect of wind energy or these wind turbines, which is the safety from a collapsed or failed turbine. But it doesn't address flicker yet, and it doesn't address sound yet. We should have a complete package. It's almost as if we're just trying to push our way through this. Let's get a complete package for us to consider. This is a real big issue. I was also inundated with a number of emails. People are very concerned, and if I was here for the earlier session, and there were some very passionate pleas out there. People are really being affected by this issue. We should have something complete so that we can understand the entire complex issue of siting these wind turbines in residential areas. I'm not comfortable with just saying, okay, but now we're going to approve the safety aspect, and then next time we'll approve this once written. This is a big issue, and it should all come all at once. I'm a little disappointed to hear, and I'm just hearing that now, that technical bulletins haven't even been written for the issue, and we're looking to move forward with one little piece of it. I'm very disappointed with this, and if there's any opportunity, Mr. Speaker, through you, to get that message back to the Cape Cod Commission for them to hold off until they have the full scope of this issue completed. I think this is going to just irritate an awful lot of people and keep these meetings, you know, very contentious, and that does nobody any good. I mean, this is a big deal, and I really wish the Cape Cod Commission would get it all complete for us to study.
Okay. I don't want to speak for the commission, but and maybe I'm going through this minefield myself, but what I understand is, right now, if you had a DRI and they included a wind turbine, they don't have any jurisdiction right now to determine the noise level. In other words, if they were to restrict it on those bases, the applicant could say, hey, what does it say in the act or in the ordinances or anything that's passed that says you have anything to do with the noise level or the safety aspects of it? So I guess this is a movement to say we want some jurisdiction to rule on these towers, and you're right, it doesn't tell them what their criteria is going to be. I'll certainly communicate to Mr. Nizwicki and his staff that the Assembly needs more information as to what the direction they're headed in. But whether or not he's prepared to do that in time for the completion of that hearing, that's going to be a question. So I don't know that we're under any time constraints, but we'll get that information out. You know, Leo.
To answer my friend's concern, the reason why we're looking at it is because an ordinance was placed before us, and that's our job. It's not our job to write an ordinance. It's not our job to, or a ordinance for the Cape Cod Commission anyhow. And as I tried to express to many people that wanted me to make motions to change their ordinance that they brought forward, we can't do that. But it is within our jurisdiction to receive the ordinance from the Cape Cod Commission, hold public hearing, listen to testimony, and hopefully make an educated decision on how to proceed forward. So that's why we're listening to it, because they dropped it off.
But I do think, Mr. Speaker, I do think that more information is essential for Government Regs Committee to be able to come to an intelligent suggestion.
Now, let's not ask too much.
As to what recommendation we would make for the full Assembly.
Yeah. Yes, I agree.
And I think that piece of important information that is not available is essential to what we need to know.
Teresa, do you want to add to that?
I just want to clarify a little bit. I mean, this is an amendment to the regional policy plan, and a number of components in the regional policy plan do work that way, where they refer to a technical bulletin. There's a bunch of reasons for that, but this is it's the same, but it's different because it impacts so many people. But there's really only 4 sort of situations in which they can even look at it, and part of this is also the requirement that 10% of a commercial development's power be generated by on-site renewables. So on one hand, they're saying you got to do it this way, and they have to have the guidelines of, so what can you do that within? And that's why it's kind of coming together. But nobody totally knows the answers yet. So I agree that there ought to be more answers. There is a draft. She did state there was a draft of this technical bulletin in progress. So it's not like there's nothing that exists, but it isn't something that's being put forth at the same time.
Yeah, it's often, not often you get such contradictory testimony. I mean, we had people, if those of you who weren't here for 2 o'clock when we had the initial speakers, there were people who spoke passionately that their lives were ruined, that they couldn't inhabit their houses. I mean, and then later on we had someone come up and say they had done surveys of people who live around wind farms and they were fine. So, I mean, they can't both be true. And we have to, it's hard for, how do we as public officials make a decision based on that? I mean, it's going to be tough. It's tough for the commission. It's tough for us. So, yeah, Teresa.
One of the things that struck me is also the issue of kind of how you want to think about things in general on the specific. I'm sorry. There's a difference between how this should get addressed in general and the very specific situation in Falmouth, because there seem to be some very unique quantifiers of those installations. And I think that the people in Falmouth have really very, very real issues. But there's a separation between, I mean, it's important to hear how it worked out and what's happening there. But it's not necessarily a duplicatable situation that this particular regulation is going to be looking at. So there's two different threads going on, and the challenge in next time is sorting them out so that there's a focus on what this is about while still allowing those people to be heard. But it's not apples and apples totally.
And the John Oman suggested to the crowd that if they had further, if they were really concerned about this, they should contact their individual delegates. And so if you get floods of emails, you'll know what.
Well,
but he's right. He's right.
Yeah, and I wish I had been here because I would be slightly more intelligent in talking about it. But I think it is important, as Leo pointed out, we're not in a position to amend this. So people have to understand that. We can accept it, we can reject it, but we can't amend it. And it will deal with specific situations that the Cape Cod Commission deals with, which are not exactly the same as the zoning and siting issues in individual towns, which may have their own rules and regulations, which some people will come under, some turbines will come under, and some will not. But at any rate, I'm going to work on it.
I'm sorry Dick Anderson's not here, because I think it was mentioned by the counsel for the commission or someone that the 7 in Bourne may come under jurisdiction, be large enough that it would come under a DRI. So it will have ramifications in the near future. Okay, is there any other committee hearings that we've had? I guess not. We will then go on to report from the clerk, newly appointed.
The Charter Review Committee will be meeting tomorrow at 3 p.m. And there'll be a public hearing on November 3rd at 3:30 with the Finance Committee on the Septic Betterment Loan Program. That's it.
Okay. And we'll probably schedule a continuation. We will schedule a continuation of the hearing that we had today for 2 o'clock on that same day, the 3rd, do it as quickly as possible. Is there any other business to be brought before the Assembly? Leo?
I brought cranberries for everybody. The only problem is they're in a box over there, and I have 2 more boxes in my car that I could not carry in. So once that box is empty, when we leave, please see me out in the parking lot, and I'll be happy to give you your bag out there.
Okay, that's good news. Anyone else?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Aye. All right, we got